So if one of your main goals in 2026 is to get as jacked as possible, here's my advice as a fitness coach on how to achieve that. So we have some really important factors in terms of training and how muscle is built. So these factors are intensity, technique, program structure, TUS, which is time under significant tension, and then progressing strength. So these factors are going to really impact in terms of muscle mass and muscle growth, how quickly, how effectively we can build muscle. So if you look at tension, we're looking at muscle protein synthesis, which is the main driver of developing muscle. We're looking at technique, so obviously directing the areas of tension. So obviously if you're working lats, you want to obviously focus on lats, biceps, focus on biceps, etc. But AKA, you're dictating the area of tension, which is AKA the muscle. The program, which gives you a clear structure, clear progression, and adding in new stimulus when the body's needed. So as you're going through a program, you kind of work off, 4, 8, 12, 16-week cycles of a program. And it's basically just developing on new phases. So every 4 weeks, you kind of introduce a new stimulus, a new rep range. And this obviously just progresses your strength over time. The main kind of one that you would do is called linear periodization. So you would start off the phase. So let's say week 1 to 4, you start them reps on the higher end of a metabolic stimulus. So 12 to 15 plus rep range. Over time, you would drop that down, eventually working towards a 6 to 8 or even as low as a 4 to 8 rep range. Obviously, as you go through them phases, you're going to naturally develop strength over time anyway. If you're a beginner, you're going to be able to build muscle pretty quickly, especially in a program, because you're going to have that linear periodization. So you're going to have a clear structure and plan of how you're going to build the muscle. As we go next into is intensity, so training hard to send signals for adaptations in the body. So this is one of the main drivers of muscle growth. When you're building muscle growth, you're essentially, it's not like this, but you're essentially trying to create new tissue. You're trying to force your body to adapt and get bigger and stronger. So you have to really push hard. And I would say this is the biggest mindset thing, is like knowing when you're in the gym, it's go time and that's it. We're going in, we're training hard, and we're getting what we need in order to achieve what we want to. So I would say training strength and training intensity, training hard to send signals for adaptations is probably one of the most important factors in terms of building muscle mass. And then the next one is progressing strength. So you'll see a lot of bodybuilders, or not a lot of bodybuilders, a lot of newbie bodybuilders, or people who are getting into fitness or getting into bodybuilding, and they'll be like, oh yeah, but I don't want to start progressing strength. Like, I'm not a powerlifter, I'm not a strongman. And it's like, yeah, you're not a powerlifter, you're not a strongman, but bodybuilders have to increase strength too. Muscle mass or muscle it's there to drive force. So the more muscle you have, the more force you're going to produce, which is more strength. So if you're progressing your strength over time, you're going to build more muscle mass. That's just how it works, and you're not training like a powerlifter or a strongman, where you're going into really short rep ranges. You're progressing on a particular program for a particular outcome. The main thing is specificity. If you're working in an 8 to 12 rep range and you're progressing that strength over time, you're going to be building muscle because you've got a high enough rep range and a high enough volume to really burn and get that stimulus to grow muscle. But you're not going to be training strength as much as like a powerlifter would. Like, I'm a powerlifter myself. I predominantly work for my main accessories in the 6 to 1 rep range. Accessories is 12 to 15 or 8 to 12. If your main goal is to build as much muscle as possible, you need to stick between the higher end of rep ranges and then bring it down over time and then progress that over and over again over, multiple phases. We're talking months, years and on. But the main thing is that even someone like Chris Bumstead is always looking at his strength, is always looking at how much he's progressing on exercises. Even your elite guys, you're talking Chris Bumstead, elite level influencers like Jeff Nippard, Dr. Mike Egertel, a lot Larry Wheels, a lot of the influencers who are jacked as fuck are always going to be looking at their strength progression, because they know more strength equals more muscle, particularly obviously in the higher mid to higher rep ranges, right? So you need to get that out of your mind instantly right now, that not progressing strength is not going to build your muscle. That's not how the body works. So obviously, yeah. But progressing strength is a clear indicator, obviously, that you're building muscle, because you are getting stronger. And it's also that your body's adapting. So if you're getting stronger, it means that the things you're doing in the gym are working because you're getting stronger. So if you're working on a bench press and you're working in that 8 to 10 rep range and you start off at 70 kilos, eventually you work your way up to 100 kilos, you know you've built muscle because if you can't bench press 70 kilos outside of a little bit of a technique curve, which may add, 10 to 20 kilos on, if you got from 70 kilos to 100 kilos, you're going to have built muscle because with the muscle mass that you had to bench 70 kilos, you couldn't do that for 100 kilos unless you were training like an elite powerlifter. But if you're not, and you're going in that 8 to 12 rep range specifically, you are then going to obviously have built muscle. So that's one of the biggest drivers I'd say. So on here, obviously these things are kind of all important together anyway. Like not one of these things is more important than the other. So when you're looking at obviously tension technique, program intensity, progressing strength, all these things tie in together in order to have the outcome of you building muscle. So on here, if you're a beginner, obviously getting into a clear and structured program is going to be a massive thing in terms of you're going to have that structure and that planning in place in order to have then on the other side of it a clear goal and have that structure to work towards that goal, right? In terms of intensity, if you're a beginner, you're gonna not have the neural adaptation, so the mental brain adaptations to push yourself as hard as you think you can. Eventually, when you start training and you start becoming, slight intermediate to intermediate, eventually to advanced, you're gonna realize how hard you can actually push yourself. Like I didn't realize how hard I could push myself until I was being trained by the person I work for and really pushed. I mean, like to limits. I didn't really realize how hard I could proper train. And that's me, obviously, after a year and a half of training. So training hard, program structure, obviously technique, progression strength, tension, all these things are so important when it comes to building muscle mass. So these are the factors on how to build muscle and how to get as jacked as possible, ready for 2026 and roll into 2026. Start now so you don't have to start later. I think we're in October 4th or the 5th today. The sooner you start in terms of, you're not waiting until January 1st to start your New Year's resolutions and try and get possible. Because if you start now, you're already 3 months ahead of everybody else anyway. So by the time you come to that New Year's resolution, you're going to have that extra bit of motivation on January 1st. You'll be like, yo, I've put in three months of hard graft now. Imagine what I could do with another 4 to 5 months of hard graft, right? Before summertime. So yeah, the main thing I could say is keep training hard and yeah,